I know, I've shaved my head again. Hi guys and welcome back to Planet 40k. We've got another video for you today, and if you remember from our previous video, we did a 1,000 point list build. Now that list build is going to be a collaboration video with IDICBeer 40k, the channel that's run by Nick. So he's going to be giving us some feedback in his video, and in our video today we're going to be giving him some feedback from his 1,000 point list build he's done recently. Now in the previous video I called him IDICBeer, it's actually IDICBeer, so I just wanted to get that correction out there before we continue. But as always guys, before we get into the video, if you've yet to subscribe, hit the subscribe button below. I believe there's around 58% of you that still have yet to subscribe to the channel, so do us a massive favour by subscribing just to get our video to a wider audience. Okay, so let's get on to Nick's list. So we're going to briefly talk about what Nick's actually chosen for his list. We're not going to go through the actual list in massive detail, but I've got it on the side here. So his HQ that he selected was a Technomancer with a control node, with a failsafe overcharger and a Veil of Darkness relic. His troop selection was the 5 Immortals with the Gauss blasters. His elite selections was 3 Canoptic Spiders, all equipped with the particle beamers. There was also 1 Gloom Prism in there. Furthermore, he had 5 flayed ones. Then from the fast attack slots, he's got 5 Canoptic Wraiths, 1 with the transdimensional beamer and 4 with the particle casters. And then he had 5 Canoptic Scarabs to cap off the fast attack sections. Then as for heavy, 1 Annihilation Barge and 3 Heavy Locust Destroyers, of course with the Gauss Destructors. So that was his 1,000 point list. So I'm going to go through all the things that I think are good about the list, all the things I think are bad about the list, and some of the things that I would maybe change to make the list better, but that's of course just my opinion. Now this whole feedback is purely my opinion, my playstyle, my strategies. It doesn't mean to say I'm correct, and in his video it also doesn't mean he's correct. It's just a matter of playstyle and opinion at the end of the day. So yeah, let's move on. The dynasty that he selected was the custom dynasty of Eternal Conquerors and Relentlessly Expansionists. The permanent protocol was Protocol of Sunstorm, and the secondaries he selected was Ancient Machineries, Purge the Vermin and Treasures of Aeons. So now that we've got all that information out the way, let's move on to the good. So the first point in the good section that I really like is the combination of the Canoptic Spiders, the Canoptic Scarabs and the Technomancer. All 3 of those combined is really hard to shift. I mean, if you think about it, the Technomancer can be reanimating the Canoptic Spiders, the Canoptic Spiders can be reanimating the Canoptic Scarabs, and then you can't actually target the Technomancer himself because he's got that Lookout Sir bubble around him. So removing these with objectives secured on top of that from an objective, that's going to be pretty hard. Now to further add to that synergy, of course, the failsafe overcharger. So monster units nearby are going to have D3 extra attacks as opposed to 1 extra attack because they're monsters. So D3 extra attacks with a Strength 8 weapon. With 3 different models, that's pretty good. The Canoptic control node, which is carried by the Technomancer with that +1 to hit for Canoptic units nearby. So those Canoptic Spiders are going to be hitting on 3s. And then finally that Veil of Darkness relic. They can be taken to a certain location on the board, or maybe just moved later in the battle to a different location. But all in all, that combination is pretty dirty. Now the second bullet point in the good section is the dynasty code itself. It's probably one of our best combinations of ancient dynasties, with the Eternal Conquerors having objectives secured, along with Relentlessly Expansionist for that 6-inch pre-game move. That's going to work really nicely with the Canoptic Spiders in particular, because they're not the fastest unit, so giving them that 6-inch boost pre-game. And as already mentioned, trying to remove that combination is going to be pretty hard, and with objectives secured as well, your opponent is not going to want to try and take the objective of them because, yeah. Now as for the third bullet point, I've got the army versatility. There's lots of range attacks coming out of this list, there's lots of melee attacks coming out of this list. There's also a solid mix of strength and AP with the actual weaponry. And then to further add to the versatility, there's of course speed as well. I mean, the Annihilation Barge moves pretty quickly, the Canoptic Wraiths, the Canoptic Scarabs. There's a lot of fast moving units within the list. Again, objective secured, Relentless Expansionist, it all ties in together, getting onto those secondary objectives. With objectives secured, as already mentioned a few times now, it makes a really credible list. The next bullet point in the good section is how the primary objectives are very aligned with the secondary objectives that Nick has chosen. Now Purge the Vermin doesn't really come into play here, but it is a really strong secondary to take. But the Treasures of Aeons, as well as the Ancient Machineries, both of those secondaries tie in very nicely to the primaries because they involve getting onto an actual objective and either doing an action or just holding the actual objective. So Nick's main aim when he's playing his game is simply get on the objectives with objectives secured. He's going to be doing his primaries as well as his secondaries all at the same time. Then the final bullet point I've got with the good section is the fact that he's got a deep strike option within his list. That will tempt his opponent to screen off the backlines because the opponent is not going to want some flayed ones popping in the backlines, maybe jumping onto an objective again with objectives secured, or doing treasures of aeons, ancient machineries. His opponent is not going to want those flayed ones popping in, so they're going to likely screen the backlines, which means there's less units in the centre of the battlefield in the no man's land to be taking those central objectives, which leaves room for his Canoptic Wraiths, Canoptic Spiders to just jump on them and start scoring points quite early. So that's all the good points I got with the list. Let's move on to the bad. Now when I say bad, that sounds pretty harsh, but the list is actually really good. There's not many bad points to say. I've got a few little points that could be ironed out perhaps, but they're probably not going to be too big of a deal. Now the first one is the potential action dilemma. Now if you remember, he's got the command protocol of Sudden Storm, so he can be doing actions while still firing his range attacks. Now a lot of the units within this list are melee based units, so you've got the Canoptic Spiders, the Canoptic Wraiths in particular. Maybe they're doing some actions and there's a pretty decent charge range, maybe a 6-7 inch charge that they can quite comfortably make. But they've now got that dilemma. Do we go for the charge or do we continue doing the action? Now the obvious answer is to continue doing the action, but in that actual charge phase and then the fight phase, they could be removing those units from play. So you're kind of hindering those units from reaching their maximum potential with their melee attacks by actually doing some of the actions. Now that isn't the worst point because of course points win you games at the end of the day, but sometimes there is an opportunity to get rid of some units. The second bullet point I've got from the bad section is the Locust Heavy Destroyers seem to be the only unit within the list that have got strength 8 or more. Now of course they're strength 10, but there's nothing else that reaches even strength 8. So if I was Nick's opponent, I would be targeting those Locust Heavy Destroyers as soon as they're gone. There's only really anti-infantry weapons that can now hurt my list. There's nothing that's going to penetrate armour, for example. So at that point, Nick is really relying on his Canoptic Spiders in particular, which are strength 8, but that's only in melee. Now, we could be buffing up certain units with a few methods, such as the Protocol of the Hungry Void to get +1 to the strength, or the Disruption Field Stratagem to also get a +1 to the strength. So there are ways of boosting the strength in this list, but at range, there's only really the Locust Heavy Destroyers. What that kind of means is if you're going against a really elite faction, or maybe just an armour-heavy faction such as Astra Militarum, this list could potentially struggle. Now the third bullet point I've got for this list in terms of the bad, it means he's conceded the use of using both directives in a single protocol. Now he's opted to use the Sudden Storm, so it's not going to be that big of a deal. The +1 to the movement, yeah, you can live without that. But with some dynasties you can be using the protocol for both the directives and they can come in use, so giving that up may not be the worst thing, but it is something to note down. Now the last thing in terms of the bad section I've got for you today is the fact that you've got one single character within the list. Now if that Technomancer does go down, then all the protocols have gone because there's only one character and you need a character model within the list, within the actual game, to still be alive for command protocols to actually work. So if that Technomancer goes down, you're not going to be doing any actions while firing, and of course all the protocols that come with each battle round, you're not going to be getting any of those either. So that's something I would be wary of when you're taking a single character model. Now as for some changes, I've got a few little changes for you, Nick. Now the first one is the fact that I don't like ranged weapons on my Canoptic Wraiths. They're going to be hitting on 4s anyway, and I don't really rate the weapons that highly. If I've got 5 points spare, maybe I'll put one single particle caster on, but spending 30 points on the ranged weapons for the Wraiths I don't think is worth it, so I would take them off, save myself 30 points, and I'd also scrap the flayed ones. Now by scrapping the flayed ones as well as the Canoptic Wraiths weapons, you're now gaining 80 points. Now with 80 points you've got options. The first option, you can get another unit of Immortals, that's going to cost you 80 points on the nose. So they're not going to have that deep strike ability of course, so maybe you're really going to be using that within your strategy. So if you were really needing that, then maybe I would put those points into a unit of Death Marks. Only a 5-man unit, 75 points. The reason I'd select the Death Marks is first of all they've got the deep strike again. You can be using the exact same method that you've got with the flayed ones with the Death Marks, but furthermore your command protocol of Sudden Storm, actions while shooting, that could be working pretty decent with Death Marks in particular. On top of that, Death Marks are toughness 5, flayed ones are toughness 4. I think you just get more for your money when we're talking about Death Marks. You don't even have to really use them to target characters if you don't want to, but it is a nice added option. Now if you didn't want any Death Marks, the third solution would be to get another Technomancer. So a 70-point Technomancer, get him with a Canoptic Cloak and have him in the backlines with the Locust Heavy Destroyers. So he will have that Lookout Sir bubble, but you'll be able to bring back those Locust Heavy Destroyers because they will get targeted in my opinion. Once they're gone, you've got no other anti-tank weaponry, but furthermore you're going to have 2 characters on the board now, so if you do lose one of the Technomancers, you've still got the other one to play with, so you're still going to have your command protocols. Now with that Technomancer option, having another Technomancer, maybe you're worried about that weak lookout Sir bubble popping, because as soon as you lose one single Locust Heavy Destroyer, then your Technomancer is now able to be targeted, because now there's not 3 models within close proximity. Now what I personally would do is also remove that Gloom Prism you've got on your Canoptic Spider. This should leave you with exactly 15 points, and then you get that Cryptek Arcana, which I still can't pronounce. The one where the Technomancer cannot be targeted unless he's the closest eligible model. That way he's going to pretty much be surviving until the Locust Heavy Destroyer is actually destroyed. So guys, that's my feedback on Nick's 1000 point list. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of Nick's list. What would you do to change it? What did you like about it? What did you dislike about it? And also remember to jump onto Nick's channel as IDICBeer 40k. The link will be in the description below anyway. Click on his channel. He's going to be giving me some feedback on my list that I did in my previous video. So yeah, that's our collaboration. Hopefully in the future we'll do something more on camera as opposed to doing individual videos. But for now, this is a good starting point. And it's been fun. So Nick, it's over to you. Guys, thank you all for watching. See you next time.